When I think back now, I can pinpoint the exact moment something inside me just switched off. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was the quiet kind of moment where you realize the person standing next to you, the one you thought you knew better than anyone, has already left you long before they actually walk away. My wife, Madison, was the kind of woman people noticed when she entered a room. Confident, funny, sharp. She had this effortless way of turning heads without even trying, and I used to feel proud just to be the guy beside her. We'd been married 7 years, no kids, decent jobs, a small house in the suburbs. To most people, we looked solid. But lately, something had shifted. It started with small things. She'd come home later from work. Team drinks, she'd say, with that casual tone that didn't invite questions. Then came the locked phone, the turned-over screen, the new privacy she claimed she needed because she was too accessible. I tried to brush it off, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the way she smiled at her phone sometimes, it wasn't the kind of smile you reserve for work emails. One evening, I asked her if everything was okay between us. She looked up from her laptop and said, "You're overthinking again, Mark. You always do this when things get boring." That word stuck with me. Boring. Maybe that's what I'd become. Predictable. Safe. The guy who worked hard, came home on time, and remembered to water the plants she forgot about. A few weeks later, she mentioned a company party. "You should come," she said, half distracted, scrolling through her phone. "It's at the country club. Everyone's bringing their partners. It'll be good for you to meet people." That phrasing, "good for you," stung a bit. Still, I agreed. Maybe a night out would help. Maybe I was imagining the distance between us. The night of the party, I dressed in my best suit, one she'd picked for me years ago. She wore a silver dress that made her look like she belonged under chandeliers. On the drive there, she barely said a word, just scrolled through her messages, smirking at something I wasn't part of. When we arrived, she instantly came alive, laughing, touching arms, greeting everyone like she'd missed them all deeply. I tried to blend in, chat with a few people, but my eyes kept drifting back to her. She was radiant. Too radiant. Then I noticed a man hovering near her. Tall, confident, the kind of guy who carried himself like the room belonged to him. Their body language was too familiar. She leaned in when he spoke, touched his arm when she laughed. I tried to shake it off. Maybe they were just close colleagues. But when she didn't come back to the table for over half an hour, I went looking for her. That's when I saw them outside, on the terrace, away from the crowd. She was standing close to him, her hand on his chest, laughing softly. He brushed a strand of hair from her face like he'd done it before. And the way she looked at him, it wasn't professional. It wasn't friendly. It was intimate. For a long moment, I just stood there, watching. My heart didn't even race. It was like something inside me just froze. When she finally spotted me through the glass doors, her face drained of color. She whispered something to him, then rushed inside, pretending nothing happened. "Mark, there you are," she said, forcing a laugh. "I was just outside," I said quietly. Her smile faltered. "You're overreacting." Maybe I was. Maybe not. Either way, I'd stopped caring. I stayed long enough to finish my drink, then told her I was heading home. She could catch a ride with her team. She didn't protest. She didn't even look sorry. And as I walked out of that country club, the thought that kept looping in my mind was simple. I took my wife to a party, and she left with another man. When I woke up the next morning, the bed was cold on her side. I stared at the ceiling for a while, half hoping she'd come home in the middle of the night, that maybe I'd hear her keys in the lock, her soft steps on the floor. But the house was silent. It wasn't anger I felt. It was something heavier. A calmness that comes when you realize the storm's already passed, and all that's left is the wreckage. Around 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Madison. I stayed at Julie's. "Don't start." I didn't reply. Instead, I walked through the house, noticing all the little traces of her. Her coffee mug in the sink, her heels by the door, the half-empty bottle of her favorite perfume on the dresser. It was like she still lived here, but she didn't belong here anymore. I made a call to a locksmith. "Change the locks." "Today," I said. He arrived by noon. While he worked, I packed her things into boxes, neatly, methodically. No anger, no chaos. Just quiet order. Every folded shirt, every framed photo, every trace of her that made this house feel like ours went into storage bins. When the locksmith handed me the new keys, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: control. By the evening, I was sitting on the porch with a beer, watching the sunset, when her car finally pulled up. She got out, still in the silver dress from the night before, hair slightly messy, pretending like it was nothing. "Mark," she sighed, walking toward the door, rummaging through her purse. "Can we not do this today? I'm tired." She stuck her key in the lock, and it didn't turn. She tried again, harder this time, then stopped, looked at me. "What the hell?" I took a sip of my beer. "Changed the locks." Her expression twisted between disbelief and fury. "Are you serious? You're locking me out of my own house." "Our house," I corrected. "And after last night, I'd say that's debatable." She threw her purse down. "You're being insane. I told you nothing happened." "Don't lie to me, Madison. You left with him. Everyone saw it." For a second, her mouth opened, then shut. No defense. No apology. Just a long silence. Finally, she muttered, "You're overreacting. It was just a ride." "Right?" I said, standing up. "Well, I hope it was worth the price of admission." She glared at me, realizing for the first time that the tone in my voice had changed, that there was no begging, no pleading left in me. Just finality. "I'll call my lawyer," she snapped. "Good," I said, walking inside and closing the door. "He'll need the new address." Her fists hit the door once, twice, then silence. From the window, I watched her leave, her car speeding off, taillights fading into the street. I didn't feel proud or relieved, just empty. But in that emptiness, there was clarity. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small. That night, I sat on the couch surrounded by half-packed boxes, realizing something simple but powerful. Sometimes the most peaceful sound in the world is the sound of a key that no longer fits. The first message came that same night. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that, Mark." I stared at my phone for a while, then turned it face down. I wasn't interested in defending myself to someone who'd already made her choice. By morning, there were 3 more. "I can't believe you'd actually lock me out. Do you even care what this looks like? You're acting cruel. That's not you." No apologies. No ownership. Just accusation after accusation, as if I was the one who'd betrayed her. I didn't reply to any of them. Silence was the only response that still had meaning. That afternoon, her best friend Julie called me. Julie had always been caught between us, loyal to Madison, but too decent to lie on her behalf. "Mark," she said softly, "I don't want to be in the middle, but she's been spiraling. She's telling everyone you kicked her out with no warning." I let out a dry laugh. "Did she also mention the part where she left the party with someone else?" Julie hesitated. "I heard. People saw them leave together." There it was, confirmation from someone who didn't know me anything. I thanked her and hung up. By evening, Madison's tone shifted. The next message was quieter, desperate almost. "Can we talk? I made a mistake." Then another. "He's not who I thought he was. Please, Mark, just talk to me." For the first time, I hesitated. 7 years of history doesn't just vanish overnight. Part of me, the weaker part, wanted to open the door, to believe that maybe she'd come to her senses. But then I thought of her on that terrace, laughing like I never existed. Of her walking away without looking back. So I typed just 1 sentence and hit send. I hope he was worth it. She didn't reply for 2 days. On the 3rd night, my doorbell rang around midnight. I looked through the peephole and saw her standing there. Same silver dress, now wrinkled and worn, makeup smudged, eyes red. "Please," she said when I opened the door just a crack. "I have nowhere to go tonight." I studied her for a long moment. The woman I loved looked small now, hollowed out by choices she thought she could control. "Julie's place is 10 minutes away," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "You'd really do this? After everything we've been through?" I met her gaze evenly. "You already did this." Then I closed the door. She stayed outside for maybe 5 minutes before I heard her car start and drive away. For the first time since the party, I slept soundly. A week passed before I heard from her again. I'd started getting used to the silence, the kind that used to feel lonely but now felt clean, almost peaceful. I was slowly reclaiming my space. Every night, I came home to a house that no longer smelled like her perfume or echoed with her voice. It was just me and the quiet, and somehow, that was enough. Then, one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Mark, it's Ryan. I think you should know the truth about Madison." Ryan, the man from the party. For a moment, my pulse spiked. I didn't know what he could possibly have to say, but I opened the message anyway. He'd sent screenshots, dozens of them, texts between him and Madison, starting weeks before the party. Flirty messages, late-night confessions, plans to sneak away during work trips. And then the part that made my stomach twist. He won't even notice. Mark's too soft to do anything about it. I read that line 3 times. Soft. That's how she saw me. The husband who built her a life, paid the bills, planned anniversaries, soft. Ryan's last message read, I didn't know she was still married until the party. When I found out, I cut her off. You deserve to know she lied to both of us. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. There was nothing left to say. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the houses, I opened my laptop and logged into our shared bank account. Half the savings were still there, her half. I moved it to a new account under my name, then transferred her portion into a separate holding account. Legally clean, emotionally final. She called that night. Her name flashed on the screen again and again. I let it ring until it stopped. Then came the voicemail. Mark, please. He used me. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. I felt invisible. I made a mistake, okay? You're not listening to me. Her voice cracked near the end, but it didn't sound like regret. It sounded like panic. Panic that she'd lost control of a story she thought she could write herself out of. That weekend, she showed up again. This time, she didn't knock. She just stood by her car, staring at the house, as if it might open for her if she waited long enough. When she finally noticed me standing on the porch, she looked broken. Mark, please. I know I hurt you, but can we just talk? I need you to understand what happened. I folded my arms. You lied to him. You lied to me. What part am I supposed to understand? Her shoulders dropped. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I was lost, and he made me feel. Don't, I cut in. Don't say he made you feel anything. You made a choice. That's all this ever was. She looked at me for a long time, eyes glistening. So that's it? After everything? Yeah, I said quietly. That's it. She nodded slowly, turned, and got back in her car. I watched as she pulled away. No yelling this time. No pleading. Just silence. And in that silence, I finally understood what closure really felt like. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't revenge. It was peace, the kind you earn when you stop chasing explanations that never mattered. It had been almost a month since that last conversation on the driveway. I thought it was over. No calls. No messages. Nothing. Until one Saturday morning, I looked out the window and saw her car parked across the street again. She was sitting there, hands on the wheel, staring at the house like she was trying to remember what it used to feel like to belong here. Part of me wanted to ignore it. The other part, the part that still remembered Sunday mornings with coffee and her hair in a messy bun, wanted to know why she was back. I stepped outside. She got out of the car slowly, as if she didn't quite have the right to stand on the sidewalk anymore. Hey, she said softly. Hey. She looked thinner, tired. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her confidence, the sharp, proud version of her, was gone. What stood in front of me was the version I hadn't seen in years. Vulnerable, uncertain. I came to get the rest of my things, she said. The boxes. I nodded. They're in the garage. We walked there together, and for a moment, it felt weirdly normal. The same quiet steps, the same smell of her perfume mixed with dust and oil. But this time, there was no warmth behind it. Just 2 strangers walking through what used to be their life. As she bent down to pick up one of the boxes, a small photo frame slipped out. Our wedding picture. I hadn't noticed I'd packed it. She froze, staring at it for a long time before finally asking, Do you remember that day? I do, I said. I also remember believing we'd never end up like this. She swallowed hard. I didn't plan to ruin it, Mark. I don't know what I was looking for. Something exciting, I said quietly. Something that made you feel alive. Her eyes flicked up to mine. You make it sound like I wanted to hurt you. Didn't you? I asked. She shook her head. No, I just stopped recognizing us. I thought if I did something, anything, it would wake you up. Make you see me again. I let out a small, humorless laugh. You could have tried talking before sleeping with someone else. She didn't argue. She just stood there, tears welling up, whispering, I miss you. That one hit harder than I expected. Because for a split second, I missed her too. The version of her before the lies, before the distance. But that version didn't exist anymore. I took the photo from her hand, looked at it once, and set it on a shelf. Madison, I said quietly, you need to stop coming here. This isn't your home anymore. She wiped her eyes. So that's it. Yeah, that's it. She nodded slowly, took her boxes, and loaded them into her car. Before she got in, she turned and said, "You'll regret this one day." I just smiled faintly. Maybe, but not today. When she drove off, I didn't watch her taillights disappear this time. I just went back inside and closed the door. And for the first time, it didn't feel like I was locking someone out. It felt like I was finally locking peace in. A few nights after she left for good, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand and a blank sheet of paper in front of me. I didn't plan on writing her. I just couldn't sleep. The house felt too quiet again, and sometimes silence has a way of dragging your thoughts out of hiding. So I wrote, not to send it, just to finally say what I hadn't said when she was standing there. "Madison, you once told me I made life too easy, that you needed someone who challenged you, who didn't just say yes. Maybe that's true. Maybe I should have argued more, pushed harder, fought for your attention when I felt it slipping away. But love, at least the kind I believed in, wasn't supposed to be a competition. It was supposed to be peace. The night you left with him, something inside me broke, but not in the way you think. It wasn't anger or jealousy. It was the realization that you had already left long before that night. You just hadn't walked out yet. You said I didn't notice you. I did. I noticed you shutting down, looking through me instead of at me. I noticed when you started dressing up for team dinners, but not for me. I noticed when you stopped kissing me goodbye. I noticed everything. I just didn't think the woman I married could become a stranger so fast. Changing the locks wasn't about revenge. It was about finally accepting the truth. You and I stopped being a team a long time ago. I just didn't want to admit it. You told me I'd regret this. Maybe I will. But at least now, I can look at myself in the mirror and not see the man who let someone treat him like an option. I sat there for a long time, staring at the last line. Then I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. I never mailed it. It wasn't meant for her anymore. It was meant for me. Over the next few weeks, things started to shift. I cleaned the house, repainted the living room, changed the curtains she'd picked out. Each small change felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Neighbors stopped asking where she was. Friends stopped walking on eggshells around the subject. Even my mom, who had been quietly furious at her since the wedding, finally said, "You look lighter, honey." And she was right. Because somewhere between the heartbreak and the silence, I realized I didn't need closure from Madison. I just needed to forgive myself for loving someone who didn't know how to stay. That letter still sits in the drawer, not as a reminder of what happened, but of how far I've come since that night. Sometimes, when I open it and read those words, I don't feel pain anymore, just clarity. And maybe that's what healing really is. When the person who hurt you stops being the ending and starts being the reason you finally began again. It had been almost 6 months since I'd last seen or heard from Madison. By then, I'd built a quiet rhythm. Work, gym, weekends fixing up the house. The kind of routine that doesn't look like much from the outside, but on the inside, it holds you together. Then one Friday afternoon, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. For a long minute, I just stared at it. The name didn't sting anymore, but it didn't feel neutral either. It felt like opening a door I'd nailed shut. I answered. "Mark." Her voice was soft, careful, like she wasn't sure if she had the right to use it. "What do you need, Madison?" There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. Then, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't be calling, but I didn't know who else to reach out to." I leaned back in my chair, silent. She went on. "It's not about us. I just thought you should know. Ryan was arrested." That name again. Ryan. The guy she'd left the party with. The ghost between us. "What happened?" I asked flatly. He was married. I didn't know at first. His wife filed charges for fraud. Apparently, he'd been taking money from her family's company. It's in the news. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I could hear her swallow. Then she whispered, "I keep thinking, if I hadn't gone with him that night, maybe none of this." "Madison," I cut in. "You didn't ruin his life. You just chose the wrong person to trust. That's something we both did." She exhaled shakily. "You sound different." "I am." "Do you hate me?" she asked quietly. I thought about that for a second. No, I did for a while. But hate keeps you tied to someone even after you've let them go. I'm done with that. There was silence on the line. Then, almost in a whisper, "I miss who we were." I closed my eyes. "So do I. But who we were doesn't exist anymore." She sniffed softly, probably fighting tears. You really changed the locks, huh? Yeah, I said, a small smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Best decision I ever made. A quiet laugh slipped out of her, small, sad, but real. You always did know how to end things with a line. Goodbye, Madison, I said. Goodbye, Mark. When the call ended, I sat there for a long time, the silence stretching through the room again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt final. A year. That's how long it took for the echoes to fade. The smell of her perfume on old sweaters, the habit of setting 2 coffee cups instead of 1, the ghost of her laughter floating through rooms that no longer belonged to her. But one morning, I woke up and realized something simple. I hadn't thought about her in weeks. Not with anger, not with sadness, just nothing. And that nothing felt like peace. Life didn't explode into something new overnight. It shifted, slowly, in quiet ways. I started running again. I joined a local community project fixing up abandoned houses. On weekends, I'd drive out of town just to see the sunrise somewhere else, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when every plan revolved around her schedule. One morning, at one of those volunteer sites, I met someone. Her name was Erin. She had paint on her jeans, hair tied messily, and this easy laugh that didn't sound rehearsed. We spent most of that day working side by side, talking about nothing and everything. When she found out I'd rebuilt half my kitchen on my own, she said, "So you're one of those people who fixes things instead of replacing them?" I remember smiling. I used to be. We started meeting every weekend after that. No big declarations, no rushing anything. Just 2 people enjoying each other's company without pretending to be something they weren't. And maybe that was the real lesson. That love doesn't have to roar to be real. Sometimes it just hums quietly, showing up without demanding attention. Months later, I ran into Madison by chance at a grocery store. We didn't speak, just nodded politely. She looked fine, maybe even happy. And for the first time, seeing her didn't hurt. It didn't stir up anger or nostalgia, just closure. As I walked back to my car, I thought about that night at the party, the version of me who stood there frozen, watching her walk away with another man. If I could talk to that man now, I'd tell him something simple. Let her go. The peace you'll find is worth every second of the pain you're feeling right now. Because I took my wife to a party, and she left with another man. But the next day, when her key no longer fit the door, that was the day my life finally started to fit again.